FearnutZ, it's a show where two guys talk to you. Even though you can't talk back, Mr. Beat also feels so much to talking guys. Last 30 minutes to an hour, those two guys that I mentioned have a show named FearnutZ. And you should watch it right now.
Hello, and welcome to another FearnutZ Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about Resident Evil 6. Now, I'm a big fan of the Resident Evil series. I grew up with the series. Resident Evil Code Veronica and Resident Evil 4 are two of my all-time favorite games. Unfortunately, this one is not. Even the box says this is 4 unique stories with 4 unique game styles. And that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like 4 different games that you played through. And if you count the online, I guess you can say even a 5th game. So it's an extremely ambitious title, and the problem is it feels like it suffers from schizophrenia. You have, first of all, Leon's story. And Leon's story is the most Resident Evil of all 4 storylines. It feels like Resident Evil has a slow pace. It's actually kind of intense and builds up some tension that the other ones don't. I'm very easily scared in survival horror games, and it was the only one that even remotely put me on edge. And it's by far the best. Then you have Chris's storyline. Chris's storyline feels like a bad Army of 2 game, because this is co-op like Resident Evil 5 was, and you have either a human or AI partner running through with you. And basically it's run and gun. You're basically fighting Java, which is a new strain of the virus, but they're intelligent, they carry weapons, and when I say intelligent, the AI in this game is awful. Like, enemies will run right past you because you can tell they've been sent to run to a certain point before they start interacting with what's going on. So they'll run right past you, hit their point, and then turn around and start fighting you, even though they just ran right by. Stuff like that's pretty annoying. So with Chris's story, it's all about more squad-based combat. You have your partner with you for the entire game like you do with all the storylines, but there's also several missions where you have an actual squad that you're working with, and it is bigger stage combat. There's situations where you're following tanks and armored vehicles through city streets where it feels kind of like a Call of Duty or something like that. And then basically it just I did like the Chris's storyline's ending, which I won't get into because I don't want to have any spoilers on this for people who are looking to pick it up. But it did have what I felt was a very good climax to it. So that brings us to Jake. Now, Jake's was the storyline I was most looking forward to. I'm a huge Wesker fanboy, so I was really looking forward to playing as Jake. And it was by far the worst of the 4 story arcs. This was the most schizophrenic of all of them, because it really seemed like they had no idea what they wanted to do with Jake. And it's like, I found his hand-to-hand combat is actually more effective than his weapons. So I just ran around punching tons of random things, and I mean, you could charge up your hand-to-hand combats with him and like one-shot a lot of the enemies. I was playing on a lower difficulty setting because I actually started on a higher difficulty setting, and I started on Jake's storyline, which is the weakest of the storylines too, because it's the most disconjointed. Like, if you played through the other ones, you can kind of follow what's happening. You cannot follow what happens if you start on Jake's storyline, because it doesn't explain anything that's happening. He's just kind of thrown into this mess. No idea what's going on, no idea why things are happening. And then they did one cool thing. When it works is cool. When it doesn't work, which is more often than it works, basically you cross over into other people's games when they're at they're playing like a different character. So Leon's story, I'm playing Jake, and we're both at the same spot for this boss fight, we'll actually join games and be playing cooperatively in this boss fight, which is a cool idea, like I said, when it works. I've only successfully, in all the storylines I played through, I had this on, and I was in maybe 2 or 3 that I remember where we actually connected and played through the fight together. So it was a cool idea, didn't quite work out. Some other issues with Jake's storyline is they throw in what I can best describe as a tip of the hat to Battletoads, and it's not in a good way. Like I said, he's more hand-to-hand. Melee combat is one of his stronger attributes. But this is, if you remember the sewer, like jet ski level of Battletoads, where you got random walls flying at you. You're on a motorcycle with headlights that only see about 10 feet ahead of you, and you have to dodge vehicles or you instantly die. And this was incredibly frustrating because you can't really judge distance, you can't really see what's happening on the sides because you can only see the beam of light ahead of you. So if you see something on the left, you go over to look and see what it is, chances are you're not going to be able to get back to the right. So you had to basically preemptively dodge stuff that you didn't see. So basically what it came down to for me was memorizing little sections at a time and advancing that way. It was extremely frustrating. It was the only time I died more than like 4 or 5 times in a chapter, and I died a lot. I died a lot in that chapter. Finally, there is the Ada Wong, which is the hidden, so I'm sorry if I ruined that for anybody, but it's not really that hidden. She is in the story early and often, so you can kind of patch that together. And best way I can describe this game is kind of Resident Evil meets Metal Gear Solid. Like, you actually have where you're doing stealth missions, and well, you're encouraged to do stealth. I mean, enemies will actually hit alarms and trigger more enemies to flood onto you. You have to hide from searchlights. So it felt very Metal Gear-ish. It seemed like that was the direction they wanted to go with. And like I said, it's a very ambitious game. The one true compliment I can give it, it looks awesome. Got it for the PS3, as you can see. And the detailed environments are very well done, and they're huge. They're huge environments. But the problem is, and like it says on the box, like I said at the beginning, it tries to be 4 different games in one, and it only does one of those games well. It's a Resident Evil game. It did Leon's The Resident Evil game, which there's 4 different stories that go on. Each of them take about 5 hours. They're each 5 chapters. Each chapter takes about an hour. And that was with me playing pretty slow and looking at various things. I say, if you wanted to do a speed run, especially once you unlock weapons, you can probably beat each level in probably 30-45 minutes. So then it would take like maybe 3 hours to do a complete run through of one character. But yeah, Leon's was the only one that I thought was really, I wouldn't even say really good, but it was by far the best. And it was because it was the Resident Evil style game, where, like I said, once you got to Chris, it was all about kind of the running and gunning, and tried to be kind of a cover shooter, which it did not pull off well at all. The cover was pretty frustrating for me. Basically, it was kind of wonky on when you were going to pop out, and then you had to aim, and I just never really got the hang of it. But I was playing on a low enough difficulty setting where it didn't become that big of an issue. Basically, like I said, with the AI being as bad as it was, I could just run up and shoot most things in the head, and then, you know, run to the next thing, shoot it in the head close range, or even using some of the longer range weapons, I was able to basically take a little bit of damage and then able to recover. And that was something that I noticed in the it does have kind of a regenerating health system. Basically, you have sorry, you have multiple bars, and once you lose a full square of health, that disappears until you take an item to refill it. But if you take it down like 80%, that bar or that square will fill back up and you're back to full health in that square. Then you also have the stamina bar, which basically affects your melee combat. And if you run that out, you'll start, gasping for air, and your melee attacks won't have any energy behind them, any force behind them. So, it does have some interesting boss battles, and I'd say that's probably where it shines most. And actually, Jake has the coolest boss, if you ask me. He has this Nemesis style enemy chasing him through most of the game, who has what my friend and I called the Swiss Army arm, because he basically just ratcheted in multiple different attachments that do different things. And he was pretty menacing and chased you throughout a lot of the game, which was pretty cool. Then there's finally the multiplayer. They have, once again, which is kind of being forced into a lot of games, a horde style mode. You saw it in Mass Effect, and now you see it in here. And it's, like I said, for Mass Effect, it was completely unneeded for Mass Effect 3. It's completely unneeded here. I don't feel it added anything to the game. I'm sure there's people who will enjoy it. I don't personally enjoy it. That's just personal preference. And then there's what I call the zombie dick mode, where from best I can tell from playing it a couple times, you get to become a zombie into someone else's campaign, kind of like where the boss battles you combine to cooperatively play. This is where you get to jump in and screw people over by having intelligent zombies run into their level. I don't know if you're even notified, because as far as I know, I didn't have anyone jump into my level as a zombie. But that could have happened, and I just not be aware of it. But yeah, basically, the couple people that I went against, I've already played through the campaign, so I knew kind of how things were going to progress, and I just waited for them at a point they were going to, I knew they were going to step through this window. I stood right at the window. As soon as they stepped through, I attacked them. And yeah, basically, I didn't find that very fun either. It just felt like I was dicking people over. But once again, I'm sure trolls everywhere rejoice at the thought of jumping out and killing people, even random people, during their campaigns. So you have that. So the final verdict is, if you're a huge Resident Evil fan like I am, you probably already bought it. And from talking to a few of my friends who have purchased it, you're probably in the same boat as me and disappointed in the final product. It feels rushed. It doesn't feel complete. Like I said, the only story and gameplay style that really works well is the Leon, and that's because it is Resident Evil style, where the other ones are trying different things. And I respect them for trying the different things, but it just didn't pay off in this version of the game. And maybe moving on into future, they will keep the Resident Evil style for the Resident Evil franchise with the numbers. Keep that to be Resident Evil, and then do the branching off games, which they've done a lot of branching off games, and try to focus on perfecting the different styles they were looking to do in those games before bringing it into what is an official title, or I guess they're all official title, but what is a sequential title for them, like for instance Resident Evil 7, which I'm sure there'll be a Resident Evil 7. But yeah, so basically, if you are looking to get into survival horror, I say this is definitely not the one to get you into it, because one, it's not scary. There was very little surviving in it. There's almost no puzzles. Most of the puzzles are just get the second player to the different switch across the room type puzzles, which weren't very complicated. Ada did have a couple of cool puzzles, but even then, they weren't greatly complex. So, if you're looking to get into the Resident Evil series, I would definitely suggest Resident Evil. Well, there are two versions of this game. There's the special edition that comes with all Resident Evil titles from 1 to 6. It's a little bit more expensive, but if you are looking to get into it, that would be a great purchase, because you get the original Resident Evil Director's Cut up until Resident Evil 5 Gold, and then you also get Resident Evil 6, so you get to play the originals, you'll get to learn the stories. The first 3 are great for the PlayStation. 4, I think, is by far the strongest in the series. Like I said, if Code Veronica was on it, I would totally purchase that, because I love Code Veronica. That's probably my favorite Resident Evil game. And then 4 is probably my favorite as far as mechanics go. So those are by far my favorite 2. And then 5 I thought was good, but not as good as the previous. And then this one I feel completely dropped the ball. So that might be a good way to go. Another way to go would be, for instance, getting a game like Deadly Premonition. That is an awesome survival horror game. Once again, that one's not really very scary, but it is a fantastic world and a lot of fun. That is honestly my 3rd favorite game of all time is Deadly Premonition. And it's cheaper and it's more fun, honestly. And it still has the survival horror feel to it. So, Resident Evil 6, if you're a fanboy, pick it up. You probably already have. If you're casual, just interested to find out what the deal with Resident Evil is, do not buy this game unless you're going to buy the special edition to get the other games in the series. So, this is the FearnutZ Hour signing off.